That line keeps circling in my head, though it isn't mine to claim. It was hers. Or maybe it was just the way she looked when she said something close to it. Like her words weren't about the past as much as they were a warning about now. I didn't understand it then. I'm not sure I do even now. The first time I noticed her, really noticed her, it wasn't the kind of moment movies are made of. No slow music, no spotlight. Just the squeak of the repair shop's back door and the smell of burnt coffee in a paper cup gone cold. I was tightening a bolt under the hood of an old Honda when she stepped in, shoulders squared like she had walked through harder doors than mine. She was older. That much was obvious. Not in a way that dimmed her, but in the way people carry time differently. It was in her voice when she asked if someone could take a look at her car, low and steady, like she didn't have the patience to explain twice. Her eyes, though, they paused too long on me, and I fumbled with the wrench like a kid caught staring. Yeah? What's it doing? My words came out too quick. I hated the way my voice cracked against the silence of the shop. She gave the smallest smile, not unkind, but almost hidden, as if she didn't want to be caught giving it. It's making a sound I don't trust, she said. And I've learned to listen when something sounds wrong. I bent back under the hood to keep from looking at her, but I felt it, the kind of presence that fills a room without saying much. The shop was quiet except for the ticking of the cooling engine and the buzz of the overhead light. I asked a few questions, tried to keep it professional, but the rhythm of our voices didn't match. I was stumbling, filling the air, and she answered in these clipped, careful pieces. Dialogue imbalance. I couldn't keep up, or maybe I was talking too much. When I reached for her keys, she hesitated just a breath longer than she needed to before handing them over. Her fingers brushed mine. Not on purpose, I told myself. Still, I felt that touch even after I dropped the keys into my pocket. While I checked the car, she wandered the shop like she wasn't supposed to but didn't care. She touched the edge of the counter with her fingertips, straightened a crooked stack of invoices, glanced at the clock on the wall like she was measuring how much of herself she could leave here before it became too much. I asked if she wanted to wait inside where the air was cooler, but she shook her head. I'll stay here, she said. It didn't sound like a preference, more like a rule she had set for herself. We fell into a silence that wasn't empty. It pressed in, filled with the clink of tools and the sound of her shifting weight against the counter. I caught myself stealing glances, trying to read something in her face that she wasn't giving. When I finally told her it was nothing serious, just a loose belt, she exhaled in a way that sounded almost too heavy for such simple news. Relief mixed with something else, something I couldn't name. Thank you, she said, softer this time, as if the weight in her chest had cracked open just a little. Then she looked at me, directly this time, and I forgot whatever answer I meant to give. It should have been nothing. Just a job, just another customer. But I keep going back to that look. Like she saw something in me she didn't mean to, and like I caught it before she could take it back. And that, God help me, that moment hasn't left me since. I didn't expect to see her again so soon. Customers come and go, cars break down, parts get ordered, it all blurs together. But there she was, standing outside the shop a few days later, half sheltered under the awning as rain hammered the street. Her car was parked at the curb, wipers still dragging across the glass like they were tired of fighting. I wiped my hands on a rag and pushed open the door. You're back already? I tried to sound casual, though the words came out like I'd been waiting. She didn't look at me right away. Her hair clung to her temple, darkened by the rain. It stalled. Again. Her voice was clipped, like she was holding something back. I offered to take another look, and she hesitated before handing me the keys. That pause, again too long, like her hand wanted to retreat, hit me harder than the storm outside. Inside the shop, she didn't sit down. She hovered near the workbench, arms crossed, tracing the edge of a screwdriver with her finger. The storm filled the silence, the steady drumming against the roof. You don't have to stand there, I said, crouched over her engine. I'm fine, she answered quickly, the kind of quick that feels like armor. I nodded, pretending to focus harder than I needed to. Truth was, the car wasn't giving me much trouble, but I stretched out the moment anyway. It gave me an excuse to watch her in the reflection of the windshield, her shoulders stiff, her gaze somewhere far off. Every so often, She'd exhale like she was remembering something she didn't want to. And when her eyes met mine across the hood, just for a second, I saw how tired she was. Not physically, tired in the way people get when they've been carrying too much for too long. You should probably replace the batteries soon, I said. It's not dead yet, but she gave a small laugh, short and sharp. Story of my life. I didn't know what to say to that. Her eyes flickered down, like she regretted letting the words slip. She busied herself with the invoices stacked near the register, flipping them though they didn't matter. That laugh, though, it stuck. Not because it was funny, but because it wasn't. Because it broke through whatever wall she'd built, and for a split second, she wasn't the steady, guarded woman who'd walked in. She was human, cracked just enough to show it. When the rain slowed, I told her the car would run fine for now. She reached for the keys, and once again, her hand brushed mine. Only this time she didn't pull away as fast. Just a beat longer. Enough to make me forget the sound of the storm outside. She looked at me then, like she might say something more. But she didn't. She just pressed her lips together, gave the faintest nod, and turned toward the door. The shop felt too quiet after she left, the smell of rain drifting in, her absence louder than her presence had been. And I stood there, keys still warm in my hand, wondering what she almost said. The third time I saw her, it wasn't about the car. She came by after hours, rainwater still clinging to her coat. The shop was half dark, the clock above the register pushing past closing time. I'd been finishing paperwork I didn't want to finish when I heard the door creak open. "You're late," I said before I could think better of it. She smiled faintly, brushing damp strands of hair from her forehead. I didn't realize there were visiting hours. There was no reason for her to be there, not really. She could have called, could have waited until tomorrow. Instead, she lingered by the counter, tapping her fingers against the wood, her eyes on me, but not fully. She started, then stopped. Her hands tightened on her coat belt, twisting it once, then twice. "It's been a long day." That was all. No explanation. Just that. And yet it felt like more than she wanted to give. I didn't know what to do with it. So I poured her a cup of the coffee I'd abandoned hours earlier. It was lukewarm, bitter. She took it anyway, held it between both hands like it mattered more for the warmth than the taste. We sat at the little break table in the corner, the rain outside hammering against the corrugated roof. For a while we didn't speak. The silence wasn't empty. It pressed in, thick, like if either of us broke it, something irreversible might happen. When she finally looked up, her eyes lingered on me a second too long. "You're young," she said quietly. It wasn't judgment, more like a fact she had just remembered. "And you're not." I tried to joke, but my voice caught, softer than I meant it to be. Her lips curved, but only halfway. She didn't answer. Instead, her hand slipped as she reached for the sugar packet. Reflexively, I caught it for her. Our fingers overlapped, her skin cool from the rain, mine too warm. Neither of us pulled away fast enough. That was when her phone buzzed on the table. Loud. Jarring. The screen lit up with a name I didn't know, but I caught enough. His name. She turned the phone over, face down, as if that could erase it. The air shifted. Whatever had been suspended between us came crashing back into rules, barriers, the reminder of who she still belonged to, or at least who the world still thought she did. She cleared her throat. "I should go." I almost said don't. The word rose up in me, sat heavy in my mouth, but I swallowed it down. Instead, I just nodded, my hands gripping the edge of the table too tightly. She stood, smoothing her coat, her face composed again. But when she reached for the door, she paused. Just a half turn back toward me, as if there was something she might have said if the timing was different, if life wasn't what it was. Her hand stayed on the doorknob longer than it needed to. Then she left. The shop door clicked shut, leaving me with nothing but the hum of the lights and the echo of what almost happened. And the worst part? I wanted that almost more than I should. I told myself I wouldn't wait for her again. And yet when the shop door swung open near closing time, my pulse betrayed me. She stepped inside without explanation, her coat still unbuttoned, her face drawn in a way that suggested she hadn't slept well. "Car trouble?" I asked, though we both knew it was an excuse neither of us needed. "No," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "Not tonight." That was all. She didn't move closer, didn't sit. Just stood there, staring at the oil-stained floor like it held an answer she hadn't been able to find anywhere else. I wiped my hands on a rag and leaned against the counter, trying to act like her being there was nothing. But the silence was too heavy, too full. She wouldn't look at me, and I couldn't stop looking at her. Finally, she spoke. "What are we doing?" It wasn't sharp or accusing. It was tired, frayed, like the words had been pressing against her for days, and finally broke free. I opened my mouth, closed it again. Because what could I say? Fixing cars? Talking too long? Pretending this is just coincidence? I don't know, I admitted. My voice cracked against the quiet. Her eyes met mine then. Really met them. The kind of stare that doesn't let you shift away. It held me still, pinned me to the truth I hadn't been ready to face. This isn't. She stopped, pressing her lips together. It's not supposed to be anything. Then why are you here? I asked before I could stop myself. Her shoulders tensed. She dropped her gaze, twisting her fingers around the strap of her bag. I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, barely above a whisper. Because it feels easier here than anywhere else. That undid me more than if she'd confessed something clear. Because it wasn't about romance, or attraction, or anything I could name. It was about the heaviness she carried and the way, somehow, this dim, grease-scented shop gave her a place to set it down. I wanted to reach across the space between us, but I didn't. Instead, I let the silence stretch, both of us breathing in it, neither of us daring to move. The rain outside had stopped, but the dripping from the gutter ticked like a clock against the window. "I don't want to need this," she said finally, so soft I almost didn't catch it. Her hands trembled as she pulled her coat tighter around herself. Something shifted then. We both knew. We couldn't call this normal anymore. We couldn't pretend it was just errands and repairs and coincidence. And just before she left, she looked back at me and said the line that's been echoing in my chest ever since. "You make it too easy to forget what I've already lost." It wasn't planned, the way she lingered after dropping off her car again. The shop was quiet, the late afternoon light stretched long across the floor. She stood at the counter, rummaging through her bag like she'd lost something, though her eyes kept flicking toward me. "Sorry," she murmured, pulling out receipts, a half-used tube of lipstick, a folded piece of paper. I thought I had. She stopped, staring at what she'd just placed on the counter. It wasn't a receipt. It was a photograph. A man, smiling into the camera, arm around her. Not young, not old, maybe somewhere between. He had the kind of easy grin people wear when they don't know yet that time can take it away. Her hand froze. She didn't mean for me to see it. I knew by the way she immediately reached for it, sliding it back into her bag. But not before I noticed the faint crease down the middle, like she'd folded and unfolded it too many times. "Your husband." The words slipped out before I could stop them. She didn't answer right away. Her shoulders lifted, then fell, like she was carrying the weight of how to respond. He was. The past tense hung between us like smoke. I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything more. My throat felt too tight. She sat down on the stool near the workbench, running her thumb along the edge of her bag. "It's been 2 years. Some days it feels like yesterday. Other days," she trailed off, eyes darting to the floor. "Other days I catch myself talking to him like he's just late coming home." I didn't move closer, but my body ached with the urge to. Not to fix anything, just to share the silence with her. "You remind me of him sometimes," she said suddenly. Her voice was softer, almost embarrassed, like she hadn't meant to let it slip. My chest tightened. In a good way? Her lips curved, but not into a smile. More like into something fragile, almost breaking. In a way that makes it hard to look at you too long. I didn't know what to do with that. My hands felt restless, useless, like they didn't belong to me. So I shoved them into my pockets and leaned against the counter, forcing myself to breathe slow, steady. Neither of us spoke after that. The only sound was the tick of the wall clock, steady, merciless. She gathered her things finally, stood, and gave me a glance that wasn't meant to hold, but did anyway. And as she left, she whispered, not to me, maybe not even to herself, "I don't know if I'm here for you, or for the ghost of him." The door shut, and I realized my hands were shaking. I don't remember when I stopped pretending her visits were about the car. Maybe it was the night she sat on the stool in the corner while I closed up, her eyes following my every move without either of us needing to say why she was really there. Tonight, she came after dark, her coat unbuttoned, hair loose from the wind. She didn't bring excuses. She just stepped inside, set her bag on the counter, and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all day. "You're late," I said again, the same way I had the first time she'd come after hours. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even teasing anymore. It was recognition. She leaned against the workbench, arms folded, her gaze softer than I'd ever seen it. "And you're still here." Neither of us smiled. It wasn't a moment for that. The air was too heavy, the kind of heavy that feels like it might break if you speak too loud. "I shouldn't keep coming back," she said. The words sounded rehearsed, but her voice shook on the last syllable. "Then why do you?" My hands stilled over the rag I'd been folding, useless in my grip. She closed her eyes for a long second, as if searching herself for an answer. When she opened them again, the fight was gone. "Because it feels like I can breathe here. And I haven't in a long time." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The knot in my throat made words impossible. Instead, I moved closer, not enough to touch her, just enough to stand in her gravity. The silence stretched. I thought she might pull back, armor up again. But she didn't. She stayed. Her hand shifted on the workbench, fingers brushing against a grease-smudged rag. Slowly, deliberately, I placed my hand beside hers. Not over it. Not holding. Just near enough that the space between us finally gave way. She didn't move away. Her fingers trembled once, then stilled, resting against mine like a truce. "This isn't love," she whispered, her eyes fixed on our hands. "No," I said. "But it's something." We stood like that, close enough to hear each other's breathing, the hum of the lights above filling the quiet. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't even an answer. But it was real. Her forehead leaned the slightest bit forward, just enough to hover near my shoulder. She didn't rest it there, not fully. But the weight of almost doing so was heavier than if she had. For the first time, neither of us tried to explain it away. And in that stillness, in that fragile, trembling space, we both understood. Whatever this was, it wasn't going back. The silence between us said everything words couldn't. I think about those nights more than I should. The shop has gone back to being just a shop. Oil stains, the hum of the lights, the familiar rhythm of wrenches and bolts. But it doesn't feel the same anymore. She left something here, even when she wasn't trying to. Maybe especially then. It wasn't love. At least, not the kind you put in a frame or write on a card. It was something quieter. The kind of thing that shifts you from the inside out without announcing itself. She gave me that, even in her silence, even in her guarded pauses. I used to think I wanted answers, clear lines, declarations, a name for what we were. But now, looking back, I realized that wasn't the point. What mattered was the way she made space feel different. A cluttered shop, a bitter cup of coffee, even the rain pressing against the windows, suddenly those things weren't empty anymore. She carried regret like a shadow, and I carried longing like a weight. Somewhere in between, we found a way to breathe. I didn't fix her past, and she didn't fill the holes in me. But for a little while, we were something the rest of the world couldn't touch. I remember her laugh, short, unsteady, the one she didn't mean to let slip. I remember the way her hands shook when she admitted she didn't want to need this. I remember her voice, low and broken, saying I made it too easy to forget what she'd already lost. And I remember the silence that said more than any confession could. What did it change? Everything and nothing. I still come to work. I still turn wrenches, replace belts, wipe grease off my hands. But I don't see things the same. She taught me that love isn't always loud, or simple, or even lasting. Sometimes it's just showing up. Sometimes it's letting someone lean close, even if they never fully rest against you. She reminded me that connection doesn't have to be perfect to matter. That even broken things can hold us together in ways we don't expect. I don't know where she is now. Maybe she's found a different place to breathe. Maybe she still folds and unfolds that photograph. Maybe she's learned what I'm still learning. That love isn't about filling what's missing, but about not running from the weight we carry. What I do know is this. I'll never forget the way she looked at me that last night. Not as someone too young, not as a replacement, not even as a mistake. Just as a person who had been there when she needed someone to be. And maybe that's enough. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?